So I'm going to talk about the crucial role of data quality in AI development and why data should be top priority when you work with data development, AI development, sorry. A little bit about me. I'm currently at Ericsson, work as a global data governance coordinator, supporting our data domains and have been part of scaling up and putting new data domains in operation at Ericsson. My journey started back in 2007 when I worked with search engine optimization, focusing on mapping and labeling. And it was a small company, so I was hired to work with Google AdWords and search engine optimization, but my colleagues were developing some tools for a website, and I didn't know what it was about, and I had not heard about data labeling or data annotation. They called it tagging pictures. So me coming from a fashion background, I helped these geek tech guys to identify different garments and what are the different types and styles of clothes in the photos. And then my journey went on as a project manager, working within different industries and different positions. And a consultant recruiter found me on LinkedIn and saw that I had been working in different areas and took me on board as a freelancer working at Ericsson. And about 1.5 years ago, I also became employee at Ericsson. Outside of that, I'm also part of a newly funded think tank, Women X in Business for Ethical AI, where I serve as an advisory, supporting the board and with topics and giving advice on different AI inputs that we are receiving. I've also been a mentor at the Swedish Geek Girl meetup. Okay, so let's jump right into it. Yeah, a friend of mine posted on LinkedIn about he had asked AI to create an image, and he asked everyone to use the same prompt. And he had his picture was spot on, even to the hoodie he was wearing, to a little fridge under his table, like everything. And I was so excited, but this is the picture that came out when I used the same prompt as he did. So, of course, AI ethics is there, global data governance, yes, but I'm not sure if I see myself as a man. I think it's a white man from what I can see on the picture, and he has gray hair. I do have some gray hair, but yeah, I didn't recognize myself in this picture, as you might imagine. So as I had seen so many pictures on LinkedIn from this thread of my friend, I was like wondering how come most of them were so spot on and mine was so off. So I started by asking AI, what do you know about me? Because I had used ChatGPT for quite some time, and I was like, I think ChatGPT should know something more about me. I think ChatGPT should know that I'm a woman and something about my heritage, etc. So I was a bit confused, and that's why I started by prompting and asking. And this is what ChatGPT said. So ChatGPT gave me the answer. Yes, I know that you are a woman of color with North African roots. I was like, okay, I couldn't see that in the picture. Specifically Tunisian heritage, so quite detailed. My mother is Swedish, my father is Tunisian, but I hadn't mentioned my Swedish part in my conversations or my prompting with ChatGPT. So that I could understand. My aunt passed away during summer, and then I used ChatGPT a little bit to help me write some text about her and some other things. So ChatGPT said, your late aunt played a significant role in shaping your values and your cultural background is important to you. And then also that I'm fluent in several languages. But I think it was the parts on the right-hand side here with um, keynote speaking and those kind of things that came across in the picture. So I was a little bit, what is happening here? Why? Why was this not taken into account for this prompt? So I asked again, ChatGPT, what went wrong? And the answer was, I actually got the prompt that ChatGPT had used for DALL-E to create the image. And then I also asked what was wrong with this prompt, what should have been changed. And here it said that the ChatGPT answered me that it had used something neutral, and a white man is, according to ChatGPT, neutral, generic. And used a very broad prompt, not including things like gender, cultural heritage, and other interests. And so the prompt from one AI system to the other, so I was not involved in that. That prompt itself was not really picking up on the data and the information that the first AI system had about me. So after a few questions and me asking ChatGPT to create a new, this is what came out. So here it shows more of something heritage, maybe not the kind of clothing that I would use myself, but at least it is trying. Also, the Tunisian flag is there, so it has incorporated a few more elements to show something more about my personality. But my aunt is still a generic white man on the picture, as you can see. So I want to tie this back to one of the former speakers, Nandita, who was talking about diverse teams and the unconscious bias and representation and why it's so important to build those teams. And this is exactly why it's so important to build those teams. Because if we are putting in data where some pictures are not very specific, they are being interpreted as the norm, as being generic, while others are being interpreted as something different, something that is outside of the norm. So a woman would be outside of the norm. Somebody who's not white would be outside of the norm according to the LLMs that we have now. And something that is important to know is that it's always more difficult to adjust these large language models afterwards than to adjust them in the beginning. So first of all, we need to make sure that the data is not biased, that the data is similar. So if we are going to label a woman, we are also going to label a man. And we are also going to label those that are non-binary. So we need to label everyone if we're going to label gender. So these things are really important. And I think that by having diverse teams, those questions will arise, like why didn't you label that picture like, or why didn't you define that when you define the other thing? So that comes out of having diverse teams, the reflections, the criticality, like criticizing, questioning. It doesn't come out of a homogeneous team that thinks of themselves as the norm. So it's very important. And then, of course, also making sure that the prompting are taking this into account so that we are tailoring the prompts to pick up on things that would be important for the end user. So AI may favor dominant cultural norms, misclassifying diverse expressions. This I took from a colleague of mine who recently wrote a master thesis around AI in education. And they did a study of students' expressions and how that could support teachers to know if the students were attentive or were losing interest. But looking at the previous examples of the picture, I can also see a big risk in this, because if there are certain norms and standards on how you would express that you are attentive and that you are listening, then that could have a negative bias on students who have another cultural expression, or due to neurodiversity reasons are expressing themselves differently than what is interpreted as being the norm. So this is why it's so important to have diverse teams and to think about the quality of the data that we are putting into these models. So what can we do then? First of all, transparency. Clearly communicate how the model works, including its limitations and potential biases. Opening up for those discussions and diverse perspectives. Establish accountability for the AI outputs and ensure active monitoring, and then working on iterations. It's of course best if we can have good input from the beginning, but if not, then we at least need to have some mitigations along the way. And then, as Nandita was saying, and I have mentioned a few times here as well, diverse teams are really key to making good AI in the future. So to be able to test different phases, identify these blind spots, and ensure broader representation so that AI output is safe for everyone to use. And where comes data governance in play? The thing that I'm working with. Data governance is a way to establish and maintain and enforce data management. And the steps that we are working with are to identify the critical data elements, to label, define the data. Then we map the lineage through the system. So if there are errors along the way, then we can trace it back to the source system. And we do that by having data quality checks and data quality rules on all the systems involved. So having the lineage, we can also check where the quality goes wrong. And then defining access criteria and making sure that data is ready and available for everyone to use. So that is kind of the foundation. But as I said, it's also important to have the diverse teams and the iterations and be critical. So key takeaway, data quality directly impacts AI fairness and inclusivity. Bias arises from training data and algorithm design, but it can be mitigated. And user involvement and diverse data sets are essential for ethical AI. So that was me. Any questions? So it says here, AI detection algorithms typically used to detect cheating, plagiarism seem to biased against non-native English speakers. Yes, I've read about that too. And it depends on the data that it's trained on, and it even here it should be trained on different sets of texts and different ways of expressing oneself. Yeah, I think that was it when it came to. I'm curious, what sorts of applications of AI have you most worked with, and what applications were primarily motivating a lot of points from your talk? Thank you. In this case, it was Chat GT. I'm tired now. It's late in Sweden. It was ChatGPT that I was using for this talk, and ChatGPT is connected to DALL-E. So that was what I was using for this particular talk. At Ericsson, we have an AI playground with different LLMs that are that we can use. And we also have guidelines. So anything that is labeled a certain way can be used in the AI playground. Um, we've, for example, we can't use confidential data, but yeah, we we have some guardrails and guidelines on how to use different LLMs. So we have a broader range of LLMs that we can use at the company, and also different capabilities. So we have internal teams that are developing AI automation and other solutions internally as well from scratch. If we're interested in doing this type of work, where can we start? I was upskilled at Ericsson, so I had no previous knowledge or experience of data governance when I started. It's a very, very new field. So I know that there are a lot of courses out there. LinkedIn, for instance, has a lot of courses, and there are other places as well where you can find courses on data governance. But I suppose that companies are doing, like Ericsson as well, upskilling staff on data governance because it's so new that it's difficult for companies, at least in Europe. All over Europe, there is a lack of resources within data governance.